Welcome to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, the home for financial advice in a language you can understand. Created by Marc Freedman of Freedman Financial, he and his team of certified financial planner professionals will discuss timely topics that help individuals and families make smart financial decisions. And now, get ready for this week's edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial. My name is Marc Freedman.
And I'm Marian Gilman.
And we're here to provide you with some financial advice in a language you can understand.
That's what we do.
That is what we do. And so here we are. Fall has kicked in. The weather has changed.
You know what? It is unbelievable how fast the summer seems to go.
Especially when you're in Massachusetts.
Yes, and especially when you get older. It seems to go faster and faster.
That too. It's September 1st. I mean, it's like the calendar turned to September 1st and you woke up and went outside and it was a little brisk outside. I mean, I'm not talking about super fall weather, but you could feel fall in the air.
I've actually seen some leaves changing already.
Oh, they already are.
Yeah,
I mean,
which is amazing.
Yeah, you'll wake up in the morning and it's 50-something outside.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the temperature has been getting up to 70 in the afternoon, which is
so far
kind of like what happens, but that will start to fall away.
Absolutely.
And just as things start to fall, we find that a lot of people, now that they're back from their summer vacations, are thinking about maybe making a change, falling away from what they were doing and doing something else. And perhaps it's time to explore the retirement options that are out there. And one of the things that we've seen over the past few weeks especially are people coming to us saying, all right, now it's time to retire, or I'm thinking about retiring in the next 6 to 8 months or so, and my employer has now just presented me with a bunch of options.
Yeah, and those are the lucky people who still have pensions.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have pensions anymore, but particularly in Massachusetts, all of the school teachers, as well as all of the state workers, have a very generous pension.
They do.
And federal workers also have very generous pensions.
Yeah, and so you have to start to make some decisions. I mean, maybe you've saved in what they might have called a 457 plan or a 403B plan through your employer, but generally, teachers, state workers, even federal workers are granted a pension. And that pension decision is a very important decision to make.
Absolutely. And pensions are very different from having savings in a 403B or a 457 or even a 401k. Pensions are an income stream. You cannot take it as a lump sum. It has to be an income stream.
Yeah, and most of these pensions that people get, one of the things that happens here is that pension is fixed. And so if you're going to get, let's say, paid a $40,000 a year pension in 2024, in 2044, when you're maybe 20 years older, it's still the same amount of money. You're not getting much of an inflation increase. In some cases, there's no inflation increase whatsoever. For teachers and a few others, there's just this minor little incremental increase, which really doesn't amount to much.
But remember, I mean, if you think back 20 years ago, 2004, then, you know, prices were very different. The cost of living was very different in 2004 than it is today. We were spending a lot less. I mean, just think of prices of homes, all of that. Very, very different than what it is today.
Even just 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, think about how much rent has increased for so many people. I mean, if you've got children or grandchildren that are looking to rent a place, I mean, rent has gone up, food costs, we all know that things have gone up.
Of course.
So it's important that you understand when you're selecting that pension benefit that you're not, you may feel good about the amount of money today that you could be getting, but what does that mean for money that you're going to get in the future? Because many people, certainly folks that are state and federal government workers in Massachusetts, don't get Social Security.
That's right. Some of them do, but some of them don't. Now, Social Security, although the benefit typically isn't quite as much relative to your income as what a pension is from the state or federal government, it does have the advantage of increasing with the cost of living each and every year. So, you know, whatever the inflation factor is, your Social Security goes up by that amount. So when you make that pension decision, not only is it relatively fixed, but it is a decision that you can't change. You make it, it is done.
It's irrevocable.
That's right.
That's the term. I mean, irrevocable means can't change it.
Exactly.
So let's go through what some of those typical benefits look like, Mary. And certainly for teachers, those that come to us, people that have worked for the state, they're usually given 3 benefits, and at least in the state of Massachusetts, that's how it comes out.
Right.
It's either called option A, option B, or option C. And maybe you can explain what each of those options look like.
Right. So for every pension, you have the option of taking it as a life-only pension. A life-only pension means that that pension will pay you a certain amount for the rest of your life. No matter how long you live, makes no difference. Whether it's 10 years, 5 years, or 30 years, you get that pension payment every month for the rest of your life. So that is a life-only pension.
But what about your spouse?
Well, and that's a problem. I mean, if you're married, you want to look at that and say, oh, okay, well, what happens if I die in a year? If I die in a year and I take a life-only pension, that pension dies with me. My spouse gets nothing.
It just ends.
That's right. And you know what? That's a scary thought for several different reasons. First of all, you know, will your spouse be able to live the same lifestyle without your pension? You might have been dependent upon 2 incomes, and you might have, you know, planned your retirement on a pension and whatever your spouse might receive, whether it's Social Security or another pension. Are they going to be okay? And that is a prime consideration when you're looking at the options that anybody gives you. So there is always an option to protect your spouse as well, meaning you have to give up some of the monthly benefit they might have paid you for a life-only pension. However, if you predecease your spouse gets to keep either 100% or less of the pension you are receiving.
Right.
Now, in the state of Massachusetts, it's 68, I think it's like
two-thirds.
two-thirds.
They only give you one option, but oftentimes other pension programs give you a multitude of options.
That's right, and it can be 100%, it can be 50%.
Right, so for instance, if you're a state worker and you've been maybe paying into your pension plan, maybe there's a small amount of money that you're paying into your pay every year, that number comes to you and you get a document that comes every year that says, here's how much you've paid into the system, into the pension system. And at the end of the day, it adds up to not a heck of a lot. Even if you've been working there 20, 30 years, maybe it's $100,000 that you've paid in, somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000. And so that's where the option B comes along, right?
That's right, yes.
Why don't you explain how that works?
Well, so the option B allows you to say, okay, well, I'm going to take a life-only pension. However, I'm willing to give up a small amount of that monthly payment to me, very little, and my spouse gets whatever is left in the pool of money that I actually contributed. Well, when you think about that, if you're getting a pension, let's say you've paid in $150,000 and you're getting $50,000 a year, in 3 years, that pool of money is gone.
Presumably.
Essentially, yeah.
Presumably.
I mean, it usually doesn't happen quite like that.
It gets stretched out.
It gets stretched out. However, the pool of money doesn't typically last very long in the state of Massachusetts if you're looking at what happens here.
Yeah, so generally, if you're married, taking option B is generally not a good option.
To protect
your spouse.
Right.
Option C, or option 3, whatever you want to call it, becomes an interesting option for you to consider because there is a beneficiary protection mechanism in there.
Correct. Now remember, you are giving up money every month so that you can protect your spouse. On the other hand, when you think about it and you say, okay, well, what if I retire? Now I have paid in money into this pool of funds. I'm expecting this pension. And what if unexpectedly, you get in a car accident in a year and you die? And we've seen that happen. Yeah, so it's scary to think that if you take a life only, it's gone. That's it, nothing else.
So option C is a reduced amount of money. Let's say 15% less than what you would have gotten on the life only option. And it's different for every company. you'd get 15% less as a annual pension, but God forbid something happens to you, your spouse would get 2/3 of the check that you were receiving for the rest of his or her life.
Which is a great option.
It is an interesting option. I'm not going to say it's the best or whatever, because you have to consider all of the factors that are going on in your life. Now, one of the things that's interesting about option C, or that third option where there is the beneficiary option, is what if the person who was receiving the pension takes option C, but the spouse dies before the person who's receiving the pension? What happens there? Well, interestingly, so remember, let's say, for instance, you were getting, let's say $50,000 a year was the pension you were going to get for life only. And $42,000 was what you were going to get for option C. That's that third option.
You're protecting
your spouse. And then if you died, your spouse would get 2/3 of the $42,000, not of the $50,000, 2/3 of the $42,000. Now, what happens if your spouse dies before you? Did you know that your pension goes up to the life-only number? You're actually going to get more money. I'm not encouraging you to knock off your spouse or anything like that. But, you know, it goes up to the $50,000, and then it runs for the course of your life. So you have to look at all the nuance that's attached to each of these pension options and integrate that decision with the full complexity of your overall personal wealth and your finances. It's not a simple one-off decision that says, well, my brother-in-law did this or my sister did this. It is, what makes the most sense for you?
And we really want to mention one other thing. That is unique to, or it might, maybe not unique, but that is specific to the plan for Massachusetts.
For Massachusetts, yeah. Each state could be different.
That does not happen everywhere, and certainly not corporate pensions. You rarely see that if the spouse dies, that the pension benefit would jump back up.
That's right.
On a corporate benefit.
So on a corporate benefit, let's take Raytheon, for instance. Raytheon is known for still continuing to offer a pension benefit to its employees. That's one thing, but also Raytheon employees have a 401k. And I'm picking Raytheon, but there are several large Fortune 500 companies that have a 401k that say when you retire, you have an option. You can roll over your 401k into an IRA, you can keep it as your 401k, and you have to figure out what works best for you. But one of the other options is maybe you'd like to turn that 401k into a pension. And when that becomes an option, there are a multitude of options. They might say, well, you can take a life-only option, but maybe what you want to do is take a reduced benefit, and if you die, your spouse gets 50% or 75% or 100%. There's a load of different options.
And on many of those options, you can actually name a child as a beneficiary as well. Most of the state plans do not allow anyone but your spouse to be named as a beneficiary, but on some of the corporate plans you can.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What I'm getting at, though, is that we often find ourselves compelled with, well, I need to save, I want to keep working for, let's say, the state of Massachusetts so I can get what's called my 80% benefit, which is the largest benefit you can get, which means 80% of, I think it's the last 3 or 5 years of your salary.
3.
And you want to get there, but that's fine. That's 80% of your last 3 years' salary, but that's at the life-only payment number.
Right.
You got to figure back to say, how is that going to work into my situation? Because remember, those pensions are not going to increase very much. What do you have in your 401k? What do you have in personal assets? Will you reduce the equity in your home and move someplace smaller? Might you get an inheritance? There's all sorts of things that can play into it. Right. And that's where financial planning does its best. And one of the things that you might notice is we haven't talked about how to invest the money, because realistically, that doesn't matter at this point.
Well, with a pension, you don't even get to decide how it's invested. It is what it is. You don't make any decisions. But we really do want to stress the importance as well of saving some money outside of just the pension. Don't feel that that pension is going to be sufficient for the remainder of your life, because again, you don't get any inflation factor.
Right, but it also speaks to the fact that if the pension is a major source of your income, the onus is really on you to take the remainder of your assets and frankly put some of that money, I'll call it, at risk. because you need the rest of the money
That's right.
to help keep up with the pace of inflation for both this money and for the pension that you're getting, because the pension isn't keeping up with the pace of inflation.
And bank assets don't do that.
No, they might have been offering 4 and 5% over the past year and a half or so, but I think we all know that that's not likely to be sustainable. We know that well, we can't be certain, but I think there's a strong expectation that interest rates are going to start to drop, and that will be reflective in money market rates and CD rates and everything.
Yep. It already is reflective in some of the CD rates. You can't get a longer term CD at 5% anymore. At least we can't.
So let me put something into perspective for you. Years ago, I wrote a book called Retiring for the Genius. And I talked about a person who was a school teacher who came to see us, who was very jealous about their next door neighbor who was about to retire as well. And the next door neighbor had a pension of $1 million. Had a 401k worth $1 million. And the teacher was going to get a pension of $50,000 a year. Now, I was trying to help them understand. She was saying, well, they're going to get $1 million. That's so much better than me getting $50,000 a year. Well,
is it?
Is it?
I don't know.
Great question.
Yeah.
Because think about this. In order for the government to be able to produce a guaranteed $50,000 a year income stream to you, they need to have a certain amount of money put aside to generate that.
That's right.
And in a sense, it's actually, depending upon where interest rates are at the time or whatever, it's a little bit more than $1 million that they need to hold for you to guarantee $50,000 for the rest of your life.
So now, there you go.
Well, but the neighbor who has $1 million could take $50,000 out of their IRA, pay tax on the money, of course, and get an income. But is the guarantee that that they can continue to take $50,000 a year from that $1 million for the rest of their life? Maybe they're putting their money, exposing it to the stock market. What is the best approach? So just because you hear that your friends might have $1 million or $2 million and you have these pensions that only pay you $50,000 each or whatever, it's a pretty good deal. It really oftentimes you have to be able to consider what works best.
And you know, it's fascinating when you look at it under that perspective, that essentially they're almost equivalent.
They really are. But you have to look at, you know, there's apples, there's oranges, there's bananas. Right. I mean, you got to throw it all into the mix.
Yep.
And that's why people work with people like us, certified financial planners at Freedman Financial, because we're going to try to help you get to answers to these issues far before we figure out, how are we going to invest that money? That's not what's most important right now. It's making sure that you can have a vision for success of what your financial planning and retirement income trajectory will look like as you continue to move into those great years where you're not working anymore and you're relying on your assets, the hard work that you've put in, the money you've put aside, and the things that you want to do for your family and live that life of success.
Most definitely.
And so that's what we call financial advice in a language you can understand. If you'd like to get more information about Freedman Financial, you'd like to work with us, give our office a call, 978-531-8108. That's 978-531-8108. Or you can visit us on the web, that World Wide Web thing, at freedmanfinancial.com. That's Freedman.
2 E's and a D.
Financial.com. You can go to the bottom of any page, put in your name and your email address. You'll get signed up for our free weekly newsletter that lands in your inbox every Friday, 10:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to know about how we work, what our costs are, the type of clients we serve, how we do financial planning, who we are, that's all available on the website. Easy to find. Take a look. But that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again next week with more financial advice in a language you can understand. You've been watching and listening to Dollars and Cents. Have a great day, everybody.
Happy fall.
During today's episode of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, your host may have discussed specific financial planning and investment ideas that are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Please remember that investing involves risk and may include loss of principal. Always consult a certified financial planner professional, qualified attorney, or tax advisor prior to investing to determine what is appropriate for you. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.